We interrupt this program to bring you an important Wayfair message. Wayfair's got style tips for every home. This is Styles McKenzie helping you make those rooms sing. Today's style tip. When it comes to making a statement, treat bold patterns like neutrals. Go wild, like an untamed animal print area rug under a rustic farmhouse table from Wayfair.com. Arr, fierce. This has been your Wayfair style tip to keep those interiors superior.
Wayfair, every style, every home.
American Giant makes great clothing, sweatshirts, jeans, and more right here in the U.S. Visit American-Giant.com and get 20% off your first order with code STAPLE20. That's 20% off your first order at American-Giant.com, code STAPLE20.
Former Funny Low, welcome to lovely Las Vegas for Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Heaps Peterson, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. We've got an excellent podcast for you. We're going to be joined in a few minutes by Ryan McIntyre, who does such great work over at the Sports Gambling Podcast. Now we're taking a look at this great game that we all know and love of college basketball. We're going to be chatting with him about the impactful transfer portal moves that we have been seeing. Additionally, we're going to be talking about some of these mid-tier Big 12 teams and how they've been able to really add in there some talent and why they've been going a lot to the mid-major ranks as well. So we're going to be chatting with them about a wide variety of things there. In the final segment, we're going to get you guys a recap of the news and notes we saw in college basketball over the last 24 hours, including North Florida now looking for a new coach. They added an interim coach, so we shall see what's going to be happening there. If you have a question, comment, segment idea, what have you for this podcast, you do have one of two ways we offer those in. First one is my Twitter/X timeline at gunit_81. Keep in mind, letters EM. Maybe does not matter, so per usual, please do send these into the timeline. And the other way is find an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it is very much appreciated. From there, you're able to fire in whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast via that 5-star review. While I did not get in any Twitter/X questions today, everything is powered by EdgeBoost. Over at EdgeBoost, they are able to help you access your funds 24/7, 365 on leap years 366. They are a fund that is set up for bettors /a account that is set up for bettors to be able to allow them to access their funds at any time. And when you do go to EdgeBoost.bet, utilize a promo code of Greg, Greg. That'll get you a dollar for dollar match on your first $25 deposit. Now let's chat with our good friend Ryan McIntyre, who does such great work over at the Sports Gambling Podcast Network, and I know that he is doing just such a good job of being able to gauge this game all 12 months out of the year. You're able to follow him on Twitter/X at Moneyline_MaxBelt, MAC. And Ryan, great to get you aboard. Thank you.
I appreciate you having me, Greg. The portal is still going, but I mean, we're starting to get more clarity with some of these draft decisions.
Yep, we certainly are. And which ones do you look at as the biggest impact decisions? Because we did see a few that I thought were very interesting on Wednesday with Joshua Hubbard heading back on over to Mississippi State. I thought that was very significant. And I mean, there aren't a ton of these guys, but there are a few guys that are both in the transfer portal and in the NBA draft that I think are going to be of great intrigue.
The big one that fell today was Darian Williams, NC State. He was tremendous for that Texas Tech team. So really interested to see what he does there. You mentioned it, Joshua Hubbard going back to Mississippi State. So still waiting on a couple others, and I think we'll get some more clarity on some of these bigger names. Lendenberg with Michigan to see what happens there. And, yeah, some decisions still to be had, but starting to get some more and more clarity on the big picture in college hoops.
Yep, we certainly are getting a little bit more clarity there, and I do think that it's going to be fun to see what Williams is going to be doing because I thought that he was one of the biggest ones in the process as well, and I'm just still waiting on Milo Suzan. I'm not sure about you, but I take a look at that as one of the biggest decisions because with Houston, I think that they're going to be good without him, but I think that for Houston, there can be like Final Four good. They could be able to perhaps reach a title game once again if Uzan comes back. And if he doesn't, then I think that causes a little bit more question mark.
It really does. When you play for a guy like Kelvin Sampson, you get more comfortable in year number 2. So I think Uzan should come back. I think he would benefit from that and just another year. But I think pairing him with Pop Isaacs in the backcourt and getting Emmanuel Sharp back as well, I think if he does come back, they kind of solidifies the number 1 team in the country headed into 25-26.
Yep, and I think that is going to be an important one. Joining me on the show right now, we do have Ryan McIntyre of the Sports Gambling Podcast Network, and certainly I think that those are a few big draft decisions that we're seeing, and I just take a look at the NBA draft decisions in general, and I just see a lot more winners than losers. Right now, we're currently awaiting what Duke is going to be getting, because with Duke, they've got one guy in Cedric Howard who they thought was going to be going on over there. And typically when you got a transfer that already announces the school that he's going to be going to, it's very rare that they say in the NBA draft. But I mean, I just take a look at the landscape in general. Other than perhaps Duke, I don't think that there's a lot of teams that had an unexpected decision not go their way. And I just look at a bunch more winners rather than losers as of right now.
I think a lot of it has to do with is that you can go back to school and make a bunch of money and honestly make more money playing college basketball and if you're outside of the lottery. So it makes all the sense in the world to come back to college hoops, come back to school for another year. And for a guy like Coward, like I think he's really good, but I think he could really improve his draft stock playing at Duke. I mean, when you play for Duke or you play for Kentucky or you play for one of these blue bloods and you know you're going to be in prime time every single game, a lot of eyeballs on your product and your program, I think you have the ability to really elevate your draft stock and go from what could be a late first round, early second round to a lottery or top 10 pick the following year.
Yep, I think so as well. And I always find that to be very interesting when these guys go through the NBA draft process and they also enter the transfer portal, because right now with Cedric Howard, he's right now considering all of his options. But I mean, he's one of the few guys I've ever really seen that might actually stay in the NBA draft after they announce their school, because typically these guys, that they announce their school, it feels like they're pretty set on where they're going to be going.
No, you're absolutely right. And nothing describes the year 2025 or 26 more than I'm entering the transfer portal, I'm entering the NBA draft, but also withdrawing my name in the transfer portal. So a lot of moving parts to your point.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's always a lot of fun to be able to take a look at. But what else is a lot of fun is what we are seeing in terms of some of these moves, as well as we did see on Wednesday in college basketball. A few impactful ones, including the fact that Marcus Johnson, who not a slender guy to say the least, he decided that he was going to be going on over to Kansas State. And I'm noticing a lot of these Big 12 schools have been adding some top-flight mid-major teams, that have been adding some top-flight mid-major guys. And I think that's been very interesting in terms of the shift that we've seen in terms of the types of transfers that are going to be entering into the Big 12 this offseason.
I think a lot of the Big 12 teams just value winning from other levels. I mean, we've seen Texas Tech really perfect that model and really run with it. West Virginia's trying to do so. And I think also Houston's done a good job with that model as well. So Big 12, I think it's such a demanding league with demanding coaches that sometimes they want to get guys that are proven, more grown up, and are about the right things in their recruiting process.
No doubt about it. And then we see the Van Wilder of college basketball with, you mentioned Texas Tech, Devin Cambridge heading on over to Central Florida. And I thought that one was very interesting as well, because with Central Florida, they've actually done, in my opinion, a pretty solid job here in the portal. And I just can't help but laugh at a guy named Devin Cambridge getting his 7th year of eligibility over at Central Florida, where I think that they actually could be able to make a little bit of noise as well.
Yeah, if he can stay healthy, and that's been a big thing with Cambridge. And UCF's an intriguing team, what they've been able to do in the portal. I feel like them and Cincinnati are always entering the year as X factors and just intriguing teams in the Big 12, because we haven't seen them have really success in the Big 12, like NCAA tournament, but they also haven't completely fallen on their face either. So the Big 12 is so fascinating with adding 8 newcomers over the last 2 years. Arizona and BYU, of course, really having success right off the bat. But some of these other teams aren't horrible, and can they put it together and find some consistency? So the Big 12 floor, it seems like, is elevated once again.
Yep, and I feel like there have been a few schools that have learned from their mistakes as well. Like Colorado last offseason added absolutely nothing in by the transfer portal. And right now they've got Barrington Hargress, who's going to be coming over for them. And then John Manny, he comes over from Denver. He really didn't give them too much of anything. And I look at this team as being a very intriguing one, because while I like Hargress, I feel like this is a program that needs to get with the times. And for Colorado, I've got concerns about them once again, much like I did this past season.
Yeah, starting to wonder how much longer Tab Boyle's going to do it, and wondering if he's really cut out for this transfer portal era. And to put in perspective, 2 years ago, they had 3 NBA guys on their roster, and they weren't even able to get to the second weekend. I know they finally ended that NCAA tournament drought, but it felt like they had a lot more talent than kind of they showed on the floor, and really struggled to have some consistency. So, yeah, I'm a little worried about the Buffs. They kind of seem to be number 16 out of 16 for a second straight year here in the Big 12.
Yep, and then obviously with Arizona State, that's been a little bit less than tremendous as well, which I find that to be one of the bigger drop-offs as well, because I remember when Bobby Hurley first took that job over at Arizona State. He was coaching at Buffalo for the longest of time, and he brought in a lot of talent, and it just feels like with every progressing year, I don't know if you agree with me on this, we did see a little bit of a rise up with their offense this year, but it felt like for the longest time, Arizona State just kept getting worse and worse on offense with every progressive year, and then obviously a little bit of a rebound this year, but that defense was just so bad that it wasn't even funny.
They have been a program that just struggles with consistency, and that's kind of the best word, I think, and way to describe the Bobby Hurley era. They've always had talent. They can beat anybody, but they always lose to the teams that you shouldn't lose to. And then at their best, they're a bubble team because of just their inconsistencies. And they're always a tough team to gauge, but I will say when they're playing one of the top teams, they usually have enough talent to beat them, but they just have had such trouble finding consistency in this Bobby Hurley era. And I honestly am a little surprised that his seat isn't a little bit warmer.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. With Arizona State, I'm surprised that they didn't make a move like 3 off seasons ago at this point, as we do have our good friend Ryan McIntyre of the Sports Gambling Podcast Network joining me right here on Coast to Coast Heaps. And certainly what we're going to be seeing in the Big 12 is so intriguing, especially with Utah being one of the few schools out there in the Big 12 that made a coaching change. They've been able to mix and match in the transfer portal. As we know, they've lost a few guys that I thought were very rock solid from a season ago as well. And I think that they could be one of those interesting X factors, especially with them having such a good home court advantage and knowing that they're going to be such a tough out when they do get those games out there in the state of Utah.
Well, yeah, and they're really starting to invest in their program. It's funny. They see what BYU did from a investment into their program and the NIL collective, and then Utah, being that they're such bitter rivals, has said, all right, let's pick it up here. Sometimes that's all it takes is your rival to really start hitting it well and then hitting it out of the park. So I think Utah definitely will take a jump. It's a shame that they didn't do it with Craig Smith, because I think Craig Smith is a pretty good basketball coach, but they just refused to invest for him. But now with the coaching change, I think that they're willing to re-spend with one of their own.
Yep, I think so as well, and I've been liking what I've been seeing out of Utah this offseason. We're going to see how much they're going to be able to do in season number 1, but certainly I think that that's been a sign of things in the right direction, and I think that it's going to be very interesting to see what we get moving forward out of these mid-majors as well, because I feel like the A-10 has really been able to do it right this offseason, and then I just keep taking a look at the Big West, and with what UC Santa Barbara has been able to do, bringing in Ada Mahaney, I thought was very on the radar, and I feel like that's a really good ad for them. I was mentioning Utah, they bring in Mario Little as well, and he's going to come up big. They just picked up Marvin McGee as well, and that's one of those schools that I just take a look at for this upcoming season, and I think that they're going to be slept upon just a little bit after a few rough seasons.
Yeah, Ada Mahaney turned into a little bit of a journeyman. Sometimes we see these guys that are better at that level. So good to see him kind of coming back down here, going to UC Santa Barbara. I think that'll be a good fit. He was awesome at St. Mary's. UConn just wasn't a good fit. And, yeah, the Big West continues. I think it's going to be, once again, a really, really good basketball league. Unfortunately, probably only a one-bid league just because of the way that the metrics are set up. Nevertheless, really good. And then the A-10 right in my backyard is always good. I mean, VCU, I like what Martelli's been able to do. Tony Skinn's going to have a good team once again. And St. Bonaventure, I think, will be good. Richmond as well. GW. I just a lot of good coaches, a lot of good cultures in that and programs in that league.
And I think that's been really interesting that these have been 2 of the top mid-majors over the last few years. And how much do you think that it benefits that most of these schools, they either have a very limited football program or they have none at all? Because I think that these are the schools that now have really went all in on basketball. And we're also seeing that with the middle of the Big East getting so much better this offseason too.
Huge, Greg. I was just about to say that. I mean, the Big East is kind of proving it now. I mean, you see Kevin Willard leave the Big Ten. You don't leave the Big Ten for the Big East unless there's a big cash flow coming in here. And and that's exactly what happened. And I just think that when you don't have to spread it with your football programs, taking a chunk out of that money, everything is so NIL based nowadays, unfortunately. But hey, if you're only a basketball school, you can use that to your benefit.
Yep, you certainly can. And then I do want to ask you about this school as well, because they've brought in a lot of interesting guys here in the offseason, and I feel like Vanderbilt is one of the more intriguing teams in all of college basketball entering this year. They added in Duke Miles, who I think they committed to 3 different schools before he landed on Vanderbilt ultimately, but bringing in Frankie Collins, bringing in a few guys down low to be able to help out after they had a little bit of a tough time in the post, but additionally they were able to get Devin McLaughlin back as well. That was one of those big NBA draft decisions that was bringing on a little bit earlier, but I think that Vanderbilt has really done a nice job here in the offseason and are showing just how much a program can rise up when they find that right coach.
It really is. And I think Byington, he was awesome at JMU, and that was a great hire. And I think I talked about it before on your show, is just some of like these hires that we saw last cycle just ended up being complete home runs, and they hit it out of the park. I mean, Vanderbilt getting back to the NCAA tournament, Dusty Mag into his Sweet 16, Mark Pope, Sweet 16, Kevin Young, Sweet 16, John Calipari, Sweet 16, and even a Darren DeVries. I thought he overachieved, and the Mountaineers should have been in the NCAA tournament. So a lot of pressure on some of these first-year head coaches because the guys last cycle hit it out of the park.
Yep, at the very least, we know that they're not going to be Kenny Payne as well. So that helps out just a little bit. And what always helps us out is you, Ryan. You do such a tremendous job taking a look at this great game that we all know and love of college basketball, and let the good people at home know it's all on tap for you and how people can follow along on social media and other platforms.
I appreciate it, Greg. Yeah, go check us out at the College Experience all year long. We got portal scouting reports. We'll start to having our coaches series here in June. And the college football, we got all 136 previews kicking off here in June as well. A lot going on.
Yes, there certainly is. Ryan has his finger on the pulse of all things college sports, and the road to Omaha is right now heating up as well, and always love that. A big thanks to Ryan for joining me on Coast to Coast Hoops, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast, and coming next, it is that time of the podcast. I will recap the news and notes we saw in college basketball over the last 24 hours.
We interrupt this program to bring you an important Wayfair message. Wayfair's got style tips for every home. This is Styles McKenzie helping you make those rooms sing. Today's style tip: when it comes to making a statement, treat bold patterns like neutrals. Go wild, like an untamed animal print area rug under a rustic farmhouse table from Wayfair.com. Arr, fierce. This has been your Wayfair style tip to keep those interiors superior.
Wayfair, every style, every home.
And we're back here, lovely Las Vegas, for Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Hoops Peterson, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. Always great to be able to get Ryan McIntyre aboard. He does such an excellent job being able to gauge this great game that we all know and love of college basketball, and every single time he joins me, he lends such great insights, so a big thanks to him for joining me in the last segment. Now it is that time of the podcast. I gave you a recap of the news and notes we saw in college basketball on Thursday. North Florida might be seeing a little bit of an exodus, as for North Florida, Matt Driscoll, their coach, he has decided that he is going to be heading on over to Kansas State, and he's going to be their associate coach. Bobby Keenan, he is an associate right now for North Florida. He becomes the interim coach while they decide whether or not they're just going to ride with him for the season or if they are going to be looking elsewhere. Very unprecedented situation. This means that everyone that's on North Florida's roster has 30 days if they want to enter in the transfer portal. Now, we'll say most of these guys are already entered in the transfer portal, and they didn't sign a lot of guys of note, so it's not like you're going to be seeing like some cream of the crop talent there or anything like that, but certainly something that you do want to be gauging and want to gauge this as well. Kobe Knox, he has decided that he is going to be returning to South Carolina, and he is going to be back for his season this year. He was over at South Florida this last season where he was averaging about 11 points per contest. Not a guy that was like some sort of dynamo scorer, and I mean, Kobe Knox, I don't think was legitimately ever going to be actually staying in the NBA draft, but you know what, the fact that he's coming back, he shot about 33% from three-point shot, helps out a South Carolina team that they lose Colin Murray Boyles, and he was so good for them last season. It's probably going to be a little bit of a difficult year for them, but still, every one of these SEC teams, they've got a whole heck of a lot of talent, and this is a big one for the New Jersey Institute of Technology, a bunch of which they just didn't have a lot of talent last season, and they were one of the lesser teams in all of college basketball, but they've been able to have a few nice offseason signings. They've got Melvin Ekong-Bully, who last season, he was over at UMKC, began his career over at Missouri State. He was able to give the team about 7 points, 5 rebounds per game. Now, I'm not saying that he's going to be able to go in there and he's going to be able to completely transform the New Jersey Institute of Technology, but out there in a conference like the America East, where you know that Vermont is really that big bad wolf, but we saw them last season take a big giant step down. Bryant was able to make the NCAA tournament, but as we know, Bryant, they lose their coach in Phil Martelli Jr., so they're a team that's in a little bit of transition as well. This means that you've got just in my opinion, very golden opportunity for NJIT to be able to pick up some wins, to be a little bit more formidable than they were in past seasons, because they did a nice job of being able to really retain their own here in the transfer portal. Being able to bring back Sebastian Robinson is nice, and then Jeremy Clayville, he was a solid point guard over at St. Francis of Pennsylvania last season. He's going to be joining the fold as well. I do like what this team has been able to do, and it looks like things are going to be looking much better for them moving forward. Darion Williams, he decided that he is going to be committing to NC State, and my goodness, NC State just having an absolute haul here in the transfer portal. Will Wade has done a nice job. I'll be able to hook these guys in with Williams. He was very rock solid over at Texas Tech this last season, 14 plus points per contest, a high 30s 3-point shooter, guy that's able to give out 5.5 boards, 3.5 assists per game. He's going to be able to pair up very well with PJ Haggerty, who's been able to give you 20 plus points per contest. NC State, they're making some strong offers right now with them having Will Wade in the fold, but you just have to love this roster in general. It's not necessarily that they've signed a billion guys. They bring Kadir Copeland, Allen Breed on over from McNeese, on over with Will Wade over to NC State, but still, you bring in a guy like a Jerry Dang, who he withdrew his name from the NBA draft process as well. Trey Holloman was able to be rock solid over at Michigan State this last season, and being able to have all these guys that you're able to mix and match with, that is very big for them. And by the way, you do want to note that PJ Haggerty looks like will sign with NC State. Didn't officially make that known, and he is going through the NBA draft, but looks like there's going to be a package deal for those two guys, and that is absolutely massive for this unit. So you do love what they've got going on there. And then you got Kyrie Huey. He was over at Miami this last season, just was unable to get off the bench. He was not able to give the team too much of anything at right around about 6'10", 6'11". You dated back 2 seasons ago when he was over at Idaho State. He was able to be a relatively solid big man that season, and he has decided that he is going to be going to UTSA. So meet me for the Roadrunners during that 2023-24 campaign when he was at Idaho State. 11.5 points, 6 boards, a little bit over a block per contest. Again, is he going to be like the world's greatest big man for you? Probably not, but I mean, for UTSA, they were one of the worst rebound rate teams in all of college basketball. They just need to be able to find a few larger bodies that they could be able to rely upon that should be able to give them some relatively good production, and I think that they have found that here. For UTSA, they were a solid 3-point shooting team, a team that was able to do a good job of being able to generate turnovers as well, and at the very least for Huey, he's used to playing a little bit more up-tempo in that Miami system, and they're also bringing in Daniel Akintobi, who was over at Morgan State this last season. He should be able to give a bit of something down low with Vashawn Alouette, UMBC's Bryce Johnson being double-figure scorers. I do think that UTSA is doing a really good job of being able to mix and match here in the transfer portal as well. And then you take a look at some of these, shall we say, smaller names that are out there in the transfer portal that they decided to hook on Thursday. You've got Sammy Pacisis, who was over at New Hampshire this last season, and he was rock solid, about 15.5 points per contest, 2.5 assists per game. He was on the All-America East third team. He has decided that he is going to be going to Alabama A&M, and this is a very big ad for Alabama A&M because they do lose quite a few of their, shall we say, better pieces from a season ago. They lose the likes of A.C. Bryant and company, and for Alabama A&M, they were able to form themselves a solid team that was very much built around scoring. They're bringing in Coron Davis, 6'6" combo player from Louisiana, along with Gabe Kinsey, who was over at Grambling this last season as well. Very good ads for them, so I do think that they're really starting to build something out there in a SWAC. That you also have Bethune-Cookman, who has done a really good job of being able to run it back from 2 seasons ago, so love what I'm seeing there. You've got Will Lovings-Watt, who he was over at James Madison this last season, only was able to register about 2 points per contest. He, 2 seasons ago, when he was over at Northern Illinois, he was averaging closer to about 7 points per contest. He's going to be a good ad for a Southeast Missouri State team that feels like they make some really good shrewd moves in the transfer portal when they were able to bring in Teddy Washington from Texas A&M Corpus Christi last season. They were really able to build themselves up. They did a good job of just being able to spot a bit of talent in general, and this is a well-rounded player that I think is going to be able to help this team out in a wide variety of ways. For Southeast Missouri State, has not necessarily been the most rambunctious transfer portal period for them. They have not made a whole heck of a lot of moves, so we'll see if there's going to be a few more to come, but for SEMO, certainly a nice signing there. I think that they're very much heading in the right direction, and I love what they were able to do last season. We'll see what they're going to be able to do this season. You've got Tyshawn Archie, who last season, he was over at Tulsa. He's decided that he's going to be going to McNeese, and he was a relatively rock solid last season. He was able to supply the team 9.5 points, a steal, 2 assists per contest. For Archie, not necessarily an amazing 3-point shooter, but a guy that was able to shoot in the mid-30s from 3-point range. For McNeese, a case of the rich being able to get richer, and even though they do lose Will Wade in the offseason, the deep pockets that this program has, it is very much still bending behind him. Now, they probably don't have as many strong offers without Will Wade, but you know what? They've done a nice job of being able to bring in some great talent here in the offseason. Garwari Duel is a guy that has a lot of upside, just was never able to really find it when he was over in the Big East at both Seton and Providence. Larry Johnson is a guy that was over at Creighton that should have gotten more minutes. You've got Jarrell Colbert, who is a relatively rock-solid 6'10" big man, who was at SMU this last season. So while this is not a team that has quite the talent that they've got from a season ago, the fact that they were able to hook him in, I think that that's going to be very rock solid, and I do think that there's a good sign of things to come there. You've got Sean Simons. He was over at St. Joe's this last season. He was averaging only about 1.5 per contest. He has decided that he's going to go to UMass Lowell. For UMass Lowell, losing the likes of Quentin Missy and company in the offseason, that was very brutal for them, but I do think that for this old UMass Lowell team, they're going to be able to do a nice job of just piecing things together. They've got a few guys from the backcourt that are back from a season ago, and for UMass Lowell, I think the big key is just being able to have that great rock-solid rebounding that they had 2 seasons ago. Once again, as they've added Austin Green from Texas State, he should be able to help out down low. Simmons, he's a 6'8", little bit of a do-it-all sort of player, and they also bring in Khalil Farmer, a guy who was over at Hofstra, a relatively solid shooter for them as well. So like the way that they've been able to retool this roster. You've got Ashton Williams. He was over at Florida International last season. 7.5 points, 2.5 boards, 3 assists per game. He's going to be heading on over to Iowa. Now, I don't think that he's going to be going in there and he's going to be like some sort of a dynamo for Iowa, but for this Hawkeyes team, this is very much a new look team, and he very much just fits what this program is going to be all about in general. This is going to be an Iowa team that's going to be very rock solid on the defensive side of things. Williams is a freshman, so you have to figure a little bit more of a developmental piece for Ben McCollum. He's done a good job of being able to just have a lot of guys ride with him in general. He's pretty much bringing in that entire Drake roster with Bennett Sturts and company with him, so I love this pickup for them. I love this pickup as well. Texas A&M is going to be bringing in Rashawn Agee, who last season over at USC was able to supply the team with 9.5 points, 4.5 rebounds per game. When he was over at Bowling Green 2 seasons ago, he was able to do a nice job of just being able to hit things down low, and with the JUCO ruling, it seems as though he's going to have another year as well, because he began his career during the 2021-22 season over at Casper College as well, so that makes him eligible for the season. And for Texas A&M, I think that it's going to be really interesting to see how Bucky McMillan is going to be able to play things out, because his teams over at Sanford, they're really going to be able to generate turnovers, but he's had a lot of depth here with regards to the big men here in the offseason, as you've also been able, along with AG, get Zach Clements coming in over from Kansas. I felt like he was very underutilized. Jamie Vincent was just glued to the bench in general over at Texas, but you bring in Mackenzie Mbakpo, you bring in Marcus Hill, you bring in Frederico, so nice that they named him twice. This is a very, very talented roster right here for Texas A&M. Now, again, what Bucky McMillan is able to do with all this talent, I really don't know, but Ainea has brought in some really nice pieces in general. You've got Daniel Heteroff. He was over at USC Upstate this last season. German big man that was able to average about 4 points per contest. He has decided that he is going to be heading on over to Ryder. For Ryder, they just need any sort of positivity whatsoever. They really have just not been able to add a lot of guys here in the transfer portal. They just need a spark for their offense that was well outside the top 275 in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. A little bit of step in the right direction there, so I do like that. You've got Alec Millender, who last season was over at IU Indy. He was averaging about 8 points per contest, shot 43.5% from 3. He's going on over to UConn. Now, if UConn is utilizing him for meaningful minutes, I really don't know what to tell you there, but this is someone that was just left out in the transfer portal very late on, because for IU Indy, they canned their coach just a few days ago, Paul Carasso. That was a very interesting ordeal, to say the least. But for this UConn team, they've got plenty of depth. They now have quite a few guys that should be able to do a good job in that backcourt. After you could tell that last season, they just weren't able to retool things the way that they were necessarily liking to, with all the pieces that were from that title team from each of the last 2 years leaving. And for UConn, I think that they've done a good job here in the offseason of being able to just find good fits in general for the system, as they're going to be bringing in as well a guy, Malachi Smith, who I think is going to be a really good facilitator. Silas Emery, who at 6'5", he was a double-figure scorer over at Georgia. These guys should be able to elevate the team, along with being able to bring back 6'6" Alex Caravan as well. So I do like what they're bringing to the table, and I like that pickup for them. Malachi Davis, he has decided that he is going to be returning to Long Island, and you saw a pair of guys decide to return where they're going to be coming. Maximus Edwards, he was over at Duquesne last season, 8.5 points, right around about 3.5 rebounds per game, was a double-figure score over at George Washington. He's going to be heading on over to Duquesne, and he's going to be staying there. And for Long Island, with Malachi Davis, he was averaging 17.5 points, 3 assists, nearly 2 steals per per game, one of the better, shall we say, defensive guards out there in the mid-major ranks. Not a guy that's going to light it up from three-point range. Long Island, they're lacking a little bit of something there, but the fact that they do bring back Malachi Davis, I think that that's strong for them, and we look to be strong for you on this podcast, Coast to Coast Hoops. We're with you guys every single day throughout the year, regular season and off-season, and if you do like hearing from this fine podcast, Coast to Coast Hoops, you're able to subscribe wherever your podcast, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, Stitcher, and TuneIn. If you have a question, comment, segment idea, whatever you for this podcast, you do have one of two ways we offer those in. First one is my Twitter/X timeline at gunit_81. Keep in mind, Lars EM, maybe does not matter, so as per usual, please do send these into the timeline. Other way is find an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it is very much appreciated. From there, you're able to fire in whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast via the 5-star review. Big thanks once again, Ryan McIntyre of the Sports Gambling Podcast. I'm coming at you guys every single day, regular season and off season. On this podcast, I'll be back with you once again tomorrow. Thank you.
We interrupt this program to bring you an important Wayfair message. Wayfair's got style tips for every home. This is Nicole Byer, helping you make those rooms flyer. Today's style tip: when it comes to making a statement, treat bold patterns like neutrals. Go wild! Like an untamed animal print area rug under a rustic farmhouse table from Wayfair.com. Ooh, fierce! This has been your Wayfair style tip to keep those interiors superior.
Wayfair, every style, every home.
Here in America, work is in trouble. We've offshored our manufacturing, sent away good jobs, and lost so much ability to make things. American Giant is a company that's pushing back against this tide. They make high-quality clothing, sweatshirts, jeans, dresses, jackets, and so much more, right here in the USA. Visit American-Giant.com and get 20% off your first order when you use code STAPLE20 at checkout. That's 20% off your first order at American-Giant.com, promo code STAPLE20.
If your job at a healthcare facility includes disinfecting against viruses, you know prevention is the best medicine. And maintaining healthy spaces starts with a healthy cleaning routine. Grainger's world-class supply chain helps ensure you have the quality products you need when you need them. From disinfectants and cleaning supplies to personal protective equipment, so you can help deliver a clean bill of health. Call 1-800-GRAINGER, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.